All right. Welcome everyone to another edition of GFB Grown Folks Business on a Thursday in late April.
There you go.
The year is flying by. I mean, it is like tax time already, right? Yeah, that's the real new year. um, so let's jump right into it. Got some of the usual suspects here, and including our great producer Danya. Um, Decision was rendered this week. Verdict was given. Not a sentencing yet, but Derek Chauvin, the police officer who kneeled on the neck of George Floyd until he was dead last year, was found guilty. Second degree murder. He was found guilty on all accounts. All counts. I watched, even if I didn't want to, I still did. I think being a product of this country conditions me, a black male, to be hesitant about what may or may not happen in terms of justice, in terms of fairness. I did not have my mind made up that the right thing would not occur, because I felt like for this instance, it was impossible to reach any other conclusion. That's a feeling, though. Feelings can get you hurt. So I just resigned myself to the, hey, this is the one singular time that all of the things lined up a certain way. As unfortunate as George Floyd's murder was, as unfortunate as COVID has been, I believe that all of those circumstances, the way that he was killed, the fact that everyone was home to see it repeatedly, over and over, I think those things played a more significant role in the outcome and the decision that was rendered than anything else. And I'm okay with that. Like, as bad as that is, as unfortunate as that was, it took all of that. I'm okay to see that justice was served at this point in this situation. It's still unfortunate. That man is still no longer with us. He has been martyred. I'm not necessarily okay with the politicization of everything. Nancy Pelosi's comments of him dying for, I don't know how she said it exactly, but dying for our sacrificing his life. Yeah, no.
She said, "Thank you for your sacrifice." I believe were her actual words.
Very insensitive, ignorant of the history, in my opinion, for her to even reach that conclusion in her mind of it being some form of sacrifice. I know she mentioned that he was pleading for his mother. That had absolutely nothing of relevance in my mind to him sacrificing himself. He was trying to live. He was not trying to die. He was not someone, he has been martyred, but he was not someone that we are aware of that was in any extreme involvement in a fight for justice or social equality or rights or anything. He was just a man going about his day as best he could, who ended up in a very unfortunate circumstance and situation. And his death did galvanize enough people that the needle seemed to have been moved. So tonight, with respect to everything that's taking place, and with the utmost respect to George Floyd and his family, We'll have a conversation about the verdict, about where we're going as a nation from here, about how we personally feel this reflects on us as a nation, because there's still some hesitation from some parties to really embrace what this could mean for our country as a whole. There's still conversation that's countering the logic and rational, the rational outcome, the logical and rational outcome that took place. So somebody posted on Twitter, and I found it amusing, but it was how we should be looking at this situation. And I'm paraphrasing again. It was a newspaper, I think it was out of Australia, and it said, murderer gets convicted of murder after murder was recorded, or something like that. Yeah, it's not that complicated. And we don't have to black and white this thing. We're human beings, human race. That was foul. That was unjust, uncalled for, unnecessary. And if you, and I mean anybody listening and anybody who said silly stuff, Brett Favre, I'm like, wow, that's why, athletes, just athlete, man. Just go throw footballs and stuff. It's okay to have an opinion, but you have too many followers and fans. And that level of influence has no place when it comes to certain public affairs. And yeah, his take is appalling. It's not about intent at that point. Doesn't matter if Chauvin intended to kill him or not. He did. He did. That's it. Let's talk about it for what it is. All right, I think I've done enough to set the mood in the room. I see some familiar faces and one not so familiar, so I'll say hello to Greg and Julia and their special guest, Brother Mike. I see you traveling. Stay safe on that road. Look at the road more than you doing than us. So we want you to get where you're going, and we want to talk to you again on here. So take care. But I'll just go around the Greg or Julia, you got something you want to say? Go ahead.
Just wanted to introduce my mother.
Oh, okay.
Her name is Julie, and today's her 86th birthday. And
Happy birthday.
Grown folks. So.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Good to meet you. Glad you could be here. We
told her about you, Felton. And she's a good friend of Bob's too. So.
All right. It is a pleasure to meet you. I hope you don't formulate a whole different opinion based on what we talk about this evening, but I'm glad to have you. Glad to see you here. So we can start with you guys since you have your mics on. If you were and did pay attention to the verdict this week, just generally what your thoughts were at the moment that it was decided that it was read. I know some people were glued to their screens, and I know people who said they couldn't watch. So I don't know which side of the tracks you guys fall on, but I'd love to hear, what your thoughts were when the verdict was given.
It was interesting. I listened to the prosecution's side and thought they did such a great job. And I could not see how the verdict could go any other way. And Gregory reminded me that there's been so many times that's happened, that when we thought there's no doubt how it's going to go, and it's turned out differently. So I think we didn't hear the verdict the day that it happened, but we heard it in the news yesterday, and we were both so thankful that this is at least a start, maybe a start of some change. And we heard the interviews with his brother, and he seemed to have some peace about it, and we were thankful for that.
Good.
Absolutely. I was glad to hear some words from the family, because that intimate connection can get lost when something becomes so public and so polarizing. But it was definitely nice to hear from the family, because that's who this was for at the end of the day. As much as we became a part of it as a nation, this was their loved one. Is Greg right there with you, or would your mother like to say a couple words? Okay.
He is, and I'm going to turn it towards him. He's having a late dinner because he worked late.
Okay.
Good to be here tonight. We were with the beloved community center yesterday at noon, and it was a profound experience, because everyone who was there, who entered the room, introduced themselves as, I want to be here today because of the events in Minneapolis and because of what the verdict was. Everyone wanted to be present because it was a historic, important moment. And it was something that brought us together.
So I'm glad to hear that you guys were in an environment that seemingly received this in a way that I think it leans more towards understanding history, understanding what has come before, and understanding that this was an opportunity to get something right. As opposed, and I'll say this regardless of whatever else everybody responds in the room, I hope that you stay true to what your feelings were. I was disturbed more so by those who were glad that a decision was rendered that prevented riots or prevented backlash for what the other decision could have been, in response to what the other decision could have been. The reason why, that's disingenuous to what actually takes place. That's disingenuous to the justice that was being sought. I don't look at this one, I don't, as a preventative judgment or a preventative decision. I think this is a time that justice was served in the best of the capacity that it could be, being that he's a police officer and all of that stuff that comes with that, how hard it is to sentence a police officer. I think this is one time justice was served, and I was not desiring to hear anyone say, well, if it had went the other way, then the riots. No, that's neither here nor there. This was about something more than that. Okay. Did your mother want to say anything, or is she okay with what we're discussing?
I'm listening, but I agree with you, but I also agree with the people. I was glad the verdict was what it was, but I was terrified about what would happen if it wasn't, and probably justifiably so.
See, I'm glad that you stuck with that and stayed honest in your thoughts of having that position. That's a real position to have. But when you deny people for so long, you set up these situations to occur. I'm a firm believer in, you can create narratives that you don't want. You can create them and make them reality by not being proactive and doing the things that would negate them in the first place. So the fact that there's been so many years and instances to have a measure of civility always be present in these type situations, be missed repeatedly, whether it be Rodney King, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, the list is it's on and on. There are too many missed opportunities to normalize justice, especially when it comes to Black Americans. So here's another one. And I personally won't put that, what could have been the reaction first. I will make sure that it remains about justice as many times as this has occurred. But they got this one right. So keep getting them right. And you won't ever have to worry about that backlash taking place. That's just the way it should work. But let's not. I don't want them to get so consumed with what could happen when all you gotta do is let justice happen, let fairness happen, let equality happen, and we'll be fine. But I'm so glad that you stuck to your guns on that one, Miss Julia. I appreciate that. All right, I'm gonna go up top by my screen, and I'm gonna ask Meryl, what are your thoughts about the verdict and everything?
You know, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I think I was not necessarily super interested in watching, and I wasn't riveted like to my TV screen. I definitely had some. There's enough evidence in this country that there's a reason why people were anxious and like feeling like, well, what's going to happen here? Will justice prevail? And then there's a cynic side of me that feels much like you did, Julia, about you got to get this right for logistical reasons, because like you can't just the people were primed and ready for this to go a different direction, and so that was in my mind. I'm there thinking that was part of the decision making. I'm not in a celebratory mood. I mean, I think I was reading there's been about 14 to 15,000 civilians that have been killed by police officers with varying circumstances, whether they're armed or not armed. And 7 since 2005, 7 officers have been brought to justice and been sentenced. 7 out of 15,000 doesn't sound like anything I want to celebrate. There's still these systems in place and attitudes that will continue to have more names that we will remember for a couple weeks or a couple months or a couple years and then forget. There's so many people that I can't even remember. There's so many brothers and sisters that have been killed by this system and by the way law enforcement works in a lot of places, that I don't feel any better this week than I felt before. So like, I don't feel like there's anything. This was just a data point to me. And I just, I think there's so much work to be done.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I'm in the middle. I don't minimize it and I won't maximize it. But the reference point for me that is so similar and that I hold up as an unfortunate reflection that does not have the same result as Eric Garner. I think, he's the catalyst that I recall for I Can't Breathe.
Mm-hmm.
He was choked in New York, and that police officer got, from what I understand, I don't think he got any type punishment for that.
Mm-hmm.
Might have lost some money, but that was about it. So yeah, I understand your position on that, Meryl. It is a tough one to resign yourself to, because that this does mean something, but it's so imbalanced as to all of the things that have occurred before it. So yeah, the data point comment is it does fit this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Bob, I'm gonna shift to you. What are your sentiments, thoughts, feelings once the verdict?
I hope I can remember all the points that y'all have made thus far to kind of bounce against. To Meryl's point about this being a data point, I think it was yesterday that I read per the New York Times, the verdict in this case, based upon history, had a 1 in 2,000 chance of happening. Now, history. How long is that history? How long are they measuring the history? I don't know whether they're measuring 50 years, 20 years, 100 years. Regardless, the fact that it was a verdict that based upon history and actions of history had a 1 in 2,000 chance of happening is pretty staggering and pretty telling. And I think that that's a number that we really need to keep in our heads, because that's not a move the needle number. That said, this is also something that had to be gotten right. I mean, this time had to be gotten right, and it had to be gotten right because it needed to be gotten right. But it had to be gotten right to say something about where we really might be a little bit better than where we were yesterday, let's say, or last year or 2 years ago. I do agree that the outrage, had we not gotten it right this time, would have been unbelievable. But that's not why to get it right. Why to get it right is to get it right. And to your point, Felton, you're exactly right. If we get it right, we don't have to worry about the backlash. We don't have to worry about what happens after if we get it right. So why don't we just consistently work to get it right? I read something this afternoon that was both heartening and troubling. One of the things we've talked about here before is the matter of money and caliber of legal representation and so forth. One of the things I read today was that many accomplished attorneys in the country laid on with the prosecutors on this case and contributed to creating the prosecution, as opposed to it simply being a function of the prosecution. It was assisted by top legal talent. And the troubling thing about that is, well, how often is that going to happen? How can we rely on that to happen? The positive thing about it is it did happen. The positive thing is there was a coming together in outrage over this situation. And so we did have people coming in and helping and working to do the right thing. We all know that the DA originally was not going to press any charges at all. And public outrage is what got this to trial. And I think that's a positive thing. I think that's something that we can embrace. I also read that one of the key aspects of this verdict was because we had 9 minutes plus of this going on in video. How often do we have 9 minutes of video showing somebody's killing somebody? Even when we have video, typically it's skirmish or brief, or it's really hard to determine exactly what was going on. And so it's left to a lot of judgment. 9+ minutes of a guy on another guy's neck and watching it over and over and over again for 9+ minutes is pretty compelling. But we have murder convictions without video.
And something I want to interject real quick, Bob, because I want to put a pin in this, because I'm going to definitely go to the rippling, the residue, what effects this has overall. And something you said right before you got into the 9 minutes. Yeah, lawyers and DA representation, the prosecutors came in from all over the country, right?
Right.
As you stated, how often will that happen in other cases? But I'll also state, why was it even necessary in this one? You just bring up the 9-minute video, right? Right. So how much more solid a case can you get?
And that's really, I mean, if you take all those ingredients and you go, okay, we had a 9+ minute video that we could play over and over and over and over again. We had bystanders and witnesses that saw it all. We have top-notch attorneys. And so we get this verdict. Okay. What happens when we normalize all that? Now, you know, all that said, I do think that there's something different here. And one of the things that's different is a whole lot of white people were glued to this verdict coming in and were praying that the verdict be what it was. And in my experience, that's new. In my experience, that's new. And so in my experience tells me, okay, have we perhaps crossed the tipping point, finally? And one more comment, and that is, I have to say this, there's no justice in this. A man that was not guilty of anything died. He wasn't a martyr because he didn't want to. He didn't make that choice. He was killed. And there is no justice. There is no justice for that. And we convicting the guy that did it is as close as we can get, but it's not justice.
That's
the justice is stopping this from happening. That's the true closest we can get to justice, is for this kind of stuff to stop happening. And
So-
until we're there, we're not even close to justice as far as I'm concerned.
So last week, the conversation was centered on, how we can address, how we can fix it. And protections was one of the conversations we had. And Mike, I'm coming to you in a second. And you recall that was a big point of conversation, protections.
Hey, Mike, I'm glad you parked.
Yeah, and representation. Justice in terms of the situation is all we got, Bob. That's it. And that's why it's called justice, because it took place in the court, and it took place with
Right.
lawyers and judges. But you're right. It was never just for him to be there in the first place.
Right.
For him to have been in that situation in the first place. I definitely want to put a pin in some of this stuff, because I'm going to come back around the room and we're going to talk about the rippling effect and where we go from here, and the residue that's going to exist from this moment, whether it be something we can use to build a more solid foundation, or whether it just becomes dust and something we forget about. I think we have potential for this to be more of what Bob would like to see this as, and more of what I think the nation would like to see this as. But we cannot let this get blurred, lost, minimized, intersectionalized. And if you need me to unpack that, I will. But right now, I'm gonna let Brother Mike give his thoughts.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. You're well said by everybody. I won't be long with mine. I'll be short and sweet with mine. They are the law, but they're not above the law. They are the law, but they're not above the law. We shouldn't be in 2021 saying, if we don't do this, this may happen. Well, do the right thing in the beginning, we wouldn't be saying this now in 2021. I mean, we talk about 9 minutes and 29, or 9 minutes and some seconds. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Let me go to that. That's what George Force, that's what we stated. 8 minutes and 46 seconds of this man plead for his life on camera. Why should we have to go to court? Thank God they use the tax dollars to do that. But why should we have to, when it's in broad daylight, that this man, he's guilty? I'm sure on the other foot, if my knee was on somebody's neck, I'm gonna get charged. This is no justice, because right now, say your name, Micaiah Bryant, say his name, Deontay Wright, say his name, Frederick Cox, or I'll be marching for him this Sunday. So we don't have no justice when these cops are killing unarmed men, unarmed women daily. I know Ma'Khia Bryant had a knife in her hand. She didn't deserve to be dead, 15-year-old. You know, right at the same day of supposed to be justice for George Floyd. He takes a 16-year-old's life with a knife in her hand. He could use pepper spray and a taser. I know some might think I'm wrong about that, but I don't believe this young girl's life should be taken. So I say that to say this, you know, so you're saying, you know, this was justice for George Floyd, but 3 lives took in less than 48 hours, one in Elizabeth City in North Carolina. So, I mean, where is the accountability, as we were speaking of last week? Where is the officers held accountable? Like I just stated earlier, they are the law, but they're not above the law. There's got to be some accountability. There's got to be some punishment when they put. First thing they get to a scene is they start shooting. You shooting and explaining. I'm tired of you shooting and explaining. You saying you fearing for your life. Well, and you want to make it home. Well, we fearing for our life because we done seen so many lives taken on live on TV. We want to make it home. So why can't we say we want to make it home? You know, you telling us to calm down, won't you calm down? You get down to our level. You telling me to calm down, won't you calm down and assess this situation? Enough is enough. We're tired of you killing us and then explaining on TV why you done this. Thank God for the witnesses of George Floyd's case. Thank God for the witnesses. Thank God for those with the cameras, those heroes, for us getting justice for the Floyd family. It's some little piece for their family, but he's not bringing back George. You know, over a counterfeit $20 bill, man. That's crazy. You know.
Yeah. And it's still not. I don't even know if it's even clear whether the bill was counterfeit or not. Did they ever really come to a consensus on that? Because I know some reporters said that they couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, I want to say this, and it was great. He said this great. He said George didn't die of a big heart. He died because Derek had a small heart. That George didn't die because he had a big heart. He died because Derek had a small heart. That cop had a small heart. That cop was a sick guy. And enough is enough, man. And I thank God that they sentenced that man, and that's what he needs.
Yeah, that'll be another interesting thing to watch, is to see what the punishment will be. I'm not a fan again of the sensationalization of that coming down the line. It's already like, well, we got this part, so what's the sentencing going to be? And it's going to be a ratings bonanza in what it was, 9 weeks or something. It's going to be a while before they get to the sentencing, but we're going to be inundated with a bunch of shoulda, woulda, coulda, coulds, but not sure. And then what happens could be totally different from what's been discussed.
Yeah, what people are going to be satisfied with, right? It's like it's a game.
Yeah, they're already letting it be known that it's a cap on where it could potentially go. I think it was lawyer Shaw out of he's at UNC. He made an interesting comment on the news the other night where he said that Chauvin is a first-time offender. Now, that's what he said. I'm not sure. Who knows? But he has a record with of complaints. So could that be used against him? This is what we're going to be witnessing and watching for the next couple weeks. What I'm just not going to do, but what I just started doing. Well, this happened, but this could be the case. And what about this? And we have to consider that. So, you know, let's just let things play out as they should and see where the sentencing falls. Really good comments, everyone. I want to go back around the space one more time, and then that'll probably get us to the end of our evening. But what are the rippling effects? Just in terms of where do we go from here? I'm aware that Merrick Garland, the new head of the Department of Justice, is saying that he's going to start investigating police forces. There is a both and in this equation. There is extreme possibilities that there are domestic terrorists serving in roles of authority in this nation. There is a really strong possibility, whether it be military or whether it be police forces. I think that's a good thing. I think it's also something that should have been a normal tendency to do background checks that definitely concern one's thoughts on race and potentially setting up situations where you get to see certain behaviors from somebody that's going to have authority over a citizen. So there are things that are being discussed, including some stuff that President Joe Biden said that sounds good. I see they passed some Asian hate legislation. That was fast, man. That was quick. There's some other stuff that should be done, should be retroed and done immediately, if that could get done that fast. So let's go around the room and just tell me your thoughts. What are the rippling effects? What's going to happen because this happened? And I thought, Mike, your comment about the witnesses was apropos, and I even think about that in terms of how they're going to be affected going down the line. What nightmares are they going to have because of what they experienced? What kind of PTSD are they going to be dealing with? So you can go micro or macro, but think about this in terms of what do you see coming down the line, or what do you want to see because of the decision? Go ahead, Greg and Julie.
I'm going to go first, Felton, only to say that because this is a good thing, it doesn't mean that the other forces, I'm going to call them the dark forces, are not doing their work. They're not doing their due diligence. They're active right now, and this is a long-term effort. People are going to change. The hearts will change, minds will change, and it will be slow in coming, but it will come. I think it's part of evolution, and I think we've seen signs of it. So let's be hopeful. And I have friends who are active in all efforts along this line, and I believe in them, and I believe that the good is going to happen. It may not happen as quickly as we would like, but it is coming.
I'm a fan of optimism, Greg. I hope that your hope gives me hope, but I'm ready to see some real solid legislation, some real things take place that are not just indicators of progress, that are progress. We've got to, and this is a part of that, in my opinion. This is what I'm allowed to bring to this space, I think, and I hope I do a decent enough job of it. We got to normalize each other, man. We got to normalize being a human being. As crazy as that sounds, we got to normalize it. We got to normalize appreciating each other for each other, and not do this tribal thing, or they don't agree with me, so they can't ever be right about anything. We've got to normalize the human condition, and that goes to your point, I think, broadly. Everything's got to be normalized about being a human being. We are complicated. We are something, but we got to normalize it. Anybody else want to add on before we go to another person? Julie.
Well, I just think, God, Jesus said, be peaceful. I think we have to learn to respect and love each other. I think that's the key to our being able to live together and work together, is have our faith and do unto others. Be kind. Don't look for the worst, or, hold grudges from months or years ago. We're in the present. We have to live in the present and look to the future. Don't look backwards.
It's nothing like that golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Religious or not, that's something to live by as a philosophy. I totally agree with you, Julie. Go ahead, Julie. Go ahead, Julia.
It's confusing.
Good for you, Felton.
Yeah. Wow. I'm trying to keep positive thoughts. I agree with Mom about loving and respecting And I think, Felton, I'm inspired because there's so many more people, so many of our white friends are taking part in not things like this, because I think yours is special. Yours isn't a bunch of old white folks talking about how we're not going to be racist. But I think people are trying to make changes. I really do. And it's going to take all of us. And I so appreciate this platform you provided to give us a real perspective.
I'm grateful to be here and share it with you guys. I really am. And that's a thanks to Merrill, who is in some deep thought, and I'm interested to hear what he has to say. What are your ripples? Where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I would share the sentiments of everyone about, like, at least there being some hope and thinking and trying to, like, focus on the future and looking at this as kind of like a flashpoint. I think that's a one way to look at it. I am hopeful that all of the people that have been energized in demonstrations and protests, folks that exhibit ally behavior that are well-intentioned, continue to do so, with the caveat that the centering voices are folks that are marginalized, and make sure that that we are authentically including folks who have been impacted the most negatively in these solutions, and centering those voices and being a convener and a facilitator and a documenter, of like those sentiments, and not so much centering of themselves. So I'm hoping that happens. It has been tough to kind of have this big watershed moment that had to be this public. Like, what happens if, you don't have the video recording, if you don't have all the things that happened this summer to bring, Mr. Floyd's situation, to the forefront. Like, I just think about all of the other unknown, unheard people that have been killed or harmed that received no such justice because, like, they didn't have the fortune of being on TV and being part of this, like, special, isolated thing. So, like, but I still want to be hopeful. And then, and I think I already said this, but, like, it's going to be so important. For all these young folks and folks that have not been in this type of work or in this fight, channel that energy that it takes to, go protest or do a hashtag on Twitter or, be real vocal on social media, like turn that into like some real action, get involved civically and make some change. Because you would hope people would make change and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but that's just not how it works. Typically, people are motivated to move and do what's in their best self-interest. So hopefully there's some combination of, like, people lean into the right thing, the moral thing, the just thing, and then people being able to leverage all of those things that wield and move power. So people gonna have to learn how to navigate and use power and organize people and money and ideas, plus people that just kind of do things because they're supposed to. Because unfortunately, I don't have any faith that the powers that be are going to let go of that power. And these systems are in place for a reason, right? So there's got to be a little bit of both.
That's that solution-based approach, right? We talked about it. That's accountability, protections, and I knew I was going to forget one, but you literally just were saying them. But bottom line, we got to have some representation. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta have people that have a little understanding of what this. I shudder to call it a fight because I think that's a bit played out in terms of discussing these. But to understand what the reasons why what's your why? I like to think that's from the YMCA. That what's your why was our little thing. But I like to think that if I witness injustice, malbehaviors towards a individual who's defenseless, that I would choose to do something to counter that. And that's something that we need to normalize also. And maybe this is, maybe there's some of that rippling, and we'll get the chance to really push that narrative into some impactful places and make it really a normalcy.
Right.
That when we walk out our front door, and if we encounter a police officer or any other person of authority, is how you doing, and some equal footing, and not those tense feelings of that I hope this doesn't happen moment.
I feel like, speaking of Nate Felton real quick, just to interrupt, I feel like if there were like 4 or 5 white people that were out there that day, watching this, witnessing this as it was happening, I know that somebody who is in my affinity group, we're like, oh, I'm not going over there I'm not going to end up having to be 2 black people killed. But like, I really feel like, if there were like 4 or 5, maybe not even have to be 4, if it was 2 really well-intentioned white folks that were like, this is not right, and they rolled up on Officer Chauvin and was like, what are you doing? I just feel like there needs to be that too, like there's some power in our citizens, like not disrupting and being unlawful. But like when you see something like that, I'm hoping that there'll be more of that you see something that's wrong and you do something about it. But it's such a slippery slope, right? Because sometimes officer really could be doing their job in the way they're supposed to be doing the job, and somebody's, oh, I'm gonna make a determination, I'm gonna tell you how to do your job. But goodness gracious, but something that egregious, I just gotta feel like there's gonna be more people that are gonna be empowered to say something, do something in the moment.
That's a very interesting take on the potential. But we already discussed these random, coincidental, not coincidental moments that took place for us to have what was basically an airtight case, and unfortunately, it was at the cost of George Floyd's life. That part would have been another piece that would have just had to be that random moment, man. That person that was willing to go kick Chauvin in the head and get him off of him. But who knows how that turns out? That's the thing about what happens in reality versus what we wish may have occurred. I'm gonna come to you, Bob, and Mike. I'm gonna give you the last word this evening, but Bob, I'm coming to you. And residue, ripples, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say Julie's back, so I wanted to say happy birthday, and I know that this is not birthday party conversation, but it's important conversation, and it's a conversation that needs to be had, and I'm glad for you to be a part of it. So happy birthday, and I'm glad to see. I enjoyed the weekend. I'm glad to see you again, and whatnot. Felton, like you and I talked about earlier today, and we talked about yesterday, it's easier for some of us to be optimistic than it is for others. But optimism doesn't mean turn a blind eye to realism. And it's critically important that we maintain hope, but it's also critically important. Hey, Greg, can you mute? Greg, can y'all mute?
Please go ahead.
Can you mute your thing? We're getting feedback. Thank you. It's critically important that we are intentional, and that we pay attention, and that we take that we accept and respond to every opportunity that we have to talk and message in the right way, and don't just be quiet. Don't just sit back and wait for things to evolve, because things will evolve. Things will evolve, but they need to evolve more quickly. My reaction to the Senate thing on the Asian hate thing was exactly like yours, Felton. It's like, that was fast. And there's so many things that have been so that remain so overdue. And so why can't we put the accelerator down on so many things that are so past due? I don't know, but I think that regardless of, some people will do things for the right reasons, and some people will do things to avoid the negatives. Well, okay, if it takes doing the right thing to avoid the negatives, then let's do it for that reason. Let's do it for that reason. I mean, and that's the whole thing about the protests and the riots and whatnot. Protests, I think, are constructive. Riots are destructive, except for the fact that if to the motto that we hear and that has been around a long time, no justice, no peace. If you want peace, start with justice, and then you get peace. And so, and it's really, I think, a fairly easy equation. If we just do what's right to start with, nobody is looking for something. Nobody is looking for something that's not reasonable. And so let's just care about each other and build things right. And so much of the rest will take care of itself. You'll still have bad people out there, but you won't have bad people as a part of the system. You won't have the systemic bad things going on that perpetuate this awfulness that we've honestly built ourselves.
Yeah,
and we've got to dismantle ourselves.
I'm a fan of thinking that a utopia is a possibility and working towards it. It may never happen, but what's wrong with trying to get there?
And if we collectively tried to get there, then that's the only way we can come close to it.
There you go. So there's nothing wrong with the attempt, and who knows where you land. Yeah, well said, Bob. And I'm gonna come to you, Mike, and I'm gonna say this to you specifically because I know you're a frontline guy. Everybody can't be, doesn't have to be, but do your part where you're at with what you got going on. In consideration of all others and what their role is. Just do what feels right in terms of how you treat another human being. So, Mike, stay safe out there. Be careful, but give us a couple words while you're driving, and then don't make it too many. I don't want you to get in no trouble. You're driving again. You're in motion. Okay, you still muted or the sound's out or something. All right, see, now I need you to be careful. We're not liable. You good? Still no sound. Okay, now you're muted. Still, yeah, something's off. Something's not working. Okay, all right, there you go. Now we hear you. We hear you.
You hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now.
I apologize. I want to say appreciate this platform. And thank you for what y'all do, man. Everybody on here. Our white allies, we thank y'all for, that's where a lot of this starts at, it's making people uncomfortable. As I've said a couple shows back, it's getting people uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable, I got you where I want you to be. Big shout out to us activists that's on the front line marching. As our brother Floyd said, marching brought a lot of this justice or brought a lot of this accountability for this family, man. People say, well, why y'all march? I think we talked about that on the last show. Well, marching stops people from making money. Marching stops a lot of things because when we march, that means there's no activity in your community. So guess what? Either you're going to listen to us or we're going to keep marching. That's what marching does. Marching stops things in your community so we get your attention. So shout out to us activists at March. I was in the Florida March that happened in Greensboro. So we stopped traffic for wherever we needed to. We wasn't going to go home that night. And, we held it down how we hold it down. And that's what we do as activists. And people call me a radical activist, but I'm a peaceful activist because I believe what we need is accountability. What we need is justice in our community. That's all we want, man. We just want to be treated fair, man. Like I stated earlier, they are the law, but they're not above the law. If the officers that was there on that scene thought anything about their job, they could have looked at what Derek was doing and said, this is not protocol. That's just it. So that means the officers that he served with think just like him. He's an animal. He doesn't need a badge. He needs to be locked up where he's at in a uniform. Only difference in me and him, well, now he is a convict, but I got caught. He has got caught. So it was he never got caught, but now he have got caught. So that's the only difference in me and these police officers. Some of them ain't got caught for the things they've done. And they are the same person I am. We both human. But they put this badge on, they put this uniform on with this badge, and it makes them seem like they're above the law, but they're not above the law. And we need to stop treating them like that. And we need to stop. I'm tired of hearing saying they want to make it home. You don't think I want to make it home as a black father? I'm tired of hearing that. Well, they got a job to do. I have a family to get home to. So I'm tired of people saying that because my life matters and his life does too. But when you get out your car, treat me like you want to be treated. Okay? Come to my car respectfully. You'll get done respectfully. A lot of these young men and women have lost their lives unarmed. So I'm tired of hearing they want to make it home. Stop justifying that, man. A lot of these people could have made it home. But did they? They wanted to make it home. There's George Floyd's daughter waiting on him to come home. He would never come home because of supposed to be $20 counterfeit $20 bill. Maxine, they got mad at that lady for saying what she said. If more political leaders made statements not worrying about how they're going to pay their mortgage and how they're going to pay their car note, more city councilmen, more leaders, judges, lawyers made statements of how justice and how fairness and not how they're going to pay their mortgage, this would be a better world. But they make decisions on how I'm going to pay my bills, how I'm going to send my kids to college. Not on if this is fair or not on if this is right. These choices and decisions they make in America be about is I'm going to have a job tomorrow. Is I'm going to be sent home the next day. And that's not the type of person that I am as an activist. I believe what I say, I stand on what I say, you like it or not, because I have 6 kids, 3 beautiful queens, 3 beautiful kings, that one day it could be them. So I say that to say this, that people can say what they want to say until it's your child that's on the other side of that gun.
I'll say, and I definitely, this is not to counter that Maxine Waters' comments were, in my opinion, politicized also. I didn't see a place for any political conversation. I wanted to see this thing take place and be carried out without the blue or red tendencies we have in this country. We're already divided enough. But I understand your sentiment. But that happens at the front side of things. You go into the office with that. You stay in the office with that. That way you don't have to say it at the most opportune moments to share it. And I'll say one other thing that you mentioned, Mike, that I thought was poignant. I felt the exact same way, and more so, given how it went down with Eric Garner. How do you have 7, I think it was, other officers stand around and just let this other officer choke this man out? So, yeah, we're going to see what happens with these other officers. I think some pleas are coming, but here we go with that thing again, right? Oh, I believe, here's what's happening. We're going to get weeks and weeks of that. So I do believe that there's going to be some pleas made because they started with the top guy and the rest are going to have to figure their lives out based on, as you stated, Mike, standing there not doing anything. Guilty by association has never been more clear in that moment. Thank you all for being here. Meryl, anything you want to share before we get out of here? I got one thing I wanted to say before.
Just one little slight adjustment. Like I talked to our students and other people about this golden rule of doing to others as you would like done it to yourself. I would like to spin that a little bit and think about it as doing to others as they would like to be treated, or or dealt with. I think that allows you to be able to turn the focus away from your particular views and slants, and to think about how others would like to be treated and loved.
I think we got so much more to discuss, and I hope that you guys come back for us to do so. I love this. I love this space, and I love this crowd, and I enjoy each and every one of you. There is the potential in late May when we do our RELC meeting. We're going to commingle this thing and make it a grown folks business. Even probably start a little earlier. We'll get that information out. But I'm hopeful to have a professor of mine, someone I hold in high regard, potentially speak on the history of policing. I know I can do some of it a service, but why are they here? Why do we have them? And how did they become so powerful? And why does it seem the most atrocious occurrences in terms of their behavior are focused on Black Americans? So there is a reasoning for that, and there's a history that exists that we'll be glad to revisit, or be glad to visit. Period. Closer to the end of May, and I hope that you all can make it back for that too. It'll be the usual crowd, hopefully, and some others that are going to attend that. But thanks again for this great experience. Appreciate you, Meryl, for providing this space. Danya, great job. Appreciate you. Everyone have a good evening. Nice meeting you, Julie, and happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Miss Julie.
All right. Y'all take care.